Jainism/ʻdʒeɪnɪz, and traditionally known as Jaina dharma, Sanskrit, is an Indian religion that prescribes a path of non-violence towards all living beings and emphasizes spiritual independence and equality between all forms of life. Practitioners believe that non-violence and self-control are the means by which they can obtain liberation. Currently, Jainism is divided into two major sects, Digambara and Śvētāmbara. The word Jainism is derived from the Sanskrit verb укротить, to conquer. It refers to a battle with the passions and bodily pleasures that the Jain ascetics undertake. Those who win this battle are termed as Jina, conqueror. The term Jaina is therefore used to refer to laymen and ascetics of this tradition alike. Jainism is one of the oldest religions in the world. Jains traditionally trace their history through a succession of 24 propagators of their faith known as tirthankars, with Rishabha as the first and Mahavira as the last of the current era. For long periods of time, Jainism was the state religion of Indian kingdoms and widely adopted in the Indian subcontinent. The religion has been in decline since the 8th century CE due to the growth of and oppression by the followers of Hinduism and Islam. Jainism is a religious minority in India, with 4.2 million adherents, and there are small but notable immigrant communities in Belgium, Canada, Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, and the United States. Jains have the highest degree of literacy of any religious community in India, 94.1%. And their manuscript libraries are the oldest in the country. Origins: Statue of Rishabha, the first tirthakara, and the traditional founder of Jainism. Timeline of Jainism. The origins of Jainism are obscure. During the 5th century BC, Vardhamana Mahavira became one of the most influential teachers of Jainism. Mahavira, however, was most probably not the founder of Jainism, which reveres him as the last of the great tirthakaras of this age, and not the founder of the religion. He appears in the tradition as one who, from the beginning, had followed a religion established long ago. Prva, the traditional predecessor of Mahavira, is the first Jain figure for whom there is reasonable historical evidence. He might have lived somewhere in the 9th-7th century BC. Followers of Prva are mentioned in the canonical books, and a legend in the Udardhyana relates a meeting between a disciple of Prva and a disciple of Mahavira which brought about the union of the old branch of the Jain ideology and the new one. Literature: a Jain manuscript giving instructions on how best to live a proper Jain life. The tradition talks about a body of scriptures preached by all the tirthankars of Jainism. These scriptures were contained in 14 parts, and were known as the purvas. These were memorized and passed on through the ages, but were vulnerable, and were lost because of famine, that caused the death of several saints within 1,000 years of Mahavira's death. The Jain Agamas are canonical texts of Jainism based on Mahavira's teachings. These comprise 46 works, 12 Angas, 12 Upangagamas, 6 Chaitastyaras, 4 Amlastyaras, 10 Praknakas, and 2 Silikastyaras. The Digambara sect of Jainism maintains that these Agamas were also lost during the same famine. In the absence of authentic scriptures, Digambaras use about 25 scriptures written for their religious practice by great acharyas. These include 2 main texts, 4 Pratamanuyoga, 3 Charnanayoga, 4 Karananayoga, and 12 Dravyanayoga. Jains developed a system of philosophy and ethics that had a great impact on Indian culture. They have contributed to the culture and language of the Indian states Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Chhattisgarh. Jain scholars and poets authored Tamil classics of the Sangam period, such as the Cvaka Sintmai and Nlayir. In the beginning of the medieval period, between the 9th and 13th centuries, Kannada language authors were predominantly of the Jain and Lingayati faiths. Jains were the earliest known cultivators of Kannada literature, which they dominated until the 12th century. Jains wrote about the Tirthankara and other aspects of the faith. ʻdʒeɪnɪz is one of the greatest Kannada poets. Court poet to the Chalukya king Arakesari, a Rashtrakuta feudatory, he is best known for his Vikramarjuna Vijaya. Jains encourage their monks to do research and obtain higher education. Monks and nuns, particularly in Rajasthan, have published numerous research monographs. This is unique among Indian religious groups. The 2001 census states that Jains are India's most literate community. Jain libraries, including those at Patan and Jaisalmer, have a large number of well-preserved manuscripts. Doctrine. The nature of truth. Mahavira employed ʻdʒeɪnɪz extensively to explain the Jain philosophical concepts. Painting from Rajasthan, ca. 1900. One of the most important and fundamental doctrines of Jainism is ʻdʒeɪnɪz. It refers to the principles of pluralism and multiplicity of viewpoints, and to the notion that truth and reality are perceived differently from diverse points of view, no single one of which is complete. Jains contrast all attempts to proclaim absolute truth with this theory, which can be illustrated through the parable of the blind men and an elephant. In this story, each blind man feels a different part of an elephant, its trunk, leg, ear, and so on. All of them claim to understand and explain the true appearance of the elephant, but, due to their limited perspectives, can only partly succeed. This principle is more formally stated by observing that objects are infinite in their qualities and modes of existence, so they cannot be completely grasped in all aspects and manifestations by finite human perception. Only Kevalans omniscient beings can comprehend objects in all aspects and manifestations, others are only capable of partial knowledge. Accordingly, no single, specific, human view can claim to represent absolute truth. ʻdʒeɪnɪz encourages its adherents to consider the views and beliefs of their rivals and opposing parties. Proponents of ʻdʒeɪnɪz apply this principle to religions and philosophies, reminding themselves that any of these, even Jainism, that clings too dogmatically to its own tenets, is committing an error based on its limited point of view. The principle of ʻdʒeɪnɪz also influenced Mohandas Gandhi to adopt principles of religious tolerance, ahis, and satyagraha. Siddhiveda is the theory of conditioned predication, which recommends the expression of ʻdʒeɪnɪz by prefixing the epithet siddhi to every phrase or expression. Siddhiveda is not only an extension of ʻdʒeɪnɪz into ontology, but a separate system of logic capable of standing on its own. The Sanskrit etymological root of the term siddhi is perhaps, or maybe, but in the context of Siddhiveda it means in some ways, or from some perspective. As reality is complex, no single proposition can express its nature fully. The term siddhi should therefore be prefixed to each proposition, giving it a conditional point of view, and thus removing dogmatism from the statement. Since it comprises 7 different conditional and relative viewpoints or propositions, Siddhiveda is known as ʻdʒeɪnɪz, or the theory of 7 conditioned predications. These 7 propositions, also known as ʻdʒeɪnɪz, are 7. Siddhi avaktavya. In some ways, it is indescribable. Each of these 7 propositions examines the complex and multifaceted nature of reality from a relative point of view of time, space, substance, and mode. To ignore the complexity of reality is to commit the fallacy of dogmatism. ʻdʒeɪnɪz is the theory of partial standpoints or viewpoints. ʻdʒeɪnɪz is a compound of 2 Sanskrit words, naya, partial viewpoint, and vada, school of thought or debate. It is used to arrive at a certain inference from a point of view. Every object has infinite aspects. But when we describe one in practice, we speak only of relevant aspects, and ignore the irrelevant. This does not deny the other attributes, qualities, modes, and other aspects. They are just irrelevant from a particular perspective. As a type of critical philosophy, ʻdʒeɪnɪz holds that philosophical disputes arise out of confusion of standpoints, and the standpoints we adopt are the outcome of purposes that we may pursue, although we may not realize it. while operating within the limits of language and perceiving the complex nature of reality. Mahavira used the language of Nyas. Nyaya, being a partial expression of truth, enables us to comprehend reality part by part. Metaphysics. Soul and karma. According to Jains, souls are intrinsically pure and possess the qualities of infinite knowledge, infinite perception, infinite bliss, and infinite energy. In contemporary experience, however, these qualities are found to be defiled and obstructed on account of the soul's association with a substance called karma over an eternity of beginningless time. This bondage of the soul is explained in the Jain texts by analogy with gold, which is always found mixed with impurities in its natural state. Similarly, the ideally pure state of the soul has always been overlaid with the impurities of karma. This analogy with gold further implies that the purification of the soul can be achieved if the proper methods of refining are applied. Over the centuries, Jain monks have developed a large and sophisticated corpus of literature describing the nature of the soul, various aspects of the working of karma, and the means of attaining liberation. Tattva. Jain metaphysics is based on 7 or 9 fundamentals which are known as tattva, constituting an attempt to explain the nature of the human predicament and to provide solutions to it. 1. Jiva, the essence of living entities is called Jiva, a substance which is different from the body that houses it. Consciousness, knowledge, and perception are its fundamental attributes. 2. Ajva, non-living entities that consist of matter, space, and time fall into the category of Ajva. 3. Asrava, the interaction between Jiva and Ajva causes the influx of a karma, a particular form of Ajva, into the soul, to which it then adheres. 4. Bandha, the karma masks the Jiva and restricts it from having its true potential of perfect knowledge and perception. 5. Savara, through right conduct, it is possible to stop the influx of additional karma. 6. Niryar, by performing asceticism, it is possible to shred or burn up the existing karma. 7. Mokkha, the Jiva which has removed its karma is said to be liberated and to have its pure, intrinsic quality of perfect knowledge in its true form. Some authors add 2 additional categories, the meritorious and demeritorious acts related to karma. These are called puya and pipa respectively. These fundamentals acts as the basis for the Jain metaphysics. Cosmology. Shape of universe as per Jain cosmology in form of a cosmic man. Picture taken from 15th to 17th century Jain art. Jain cosmology. Jain beliefs postulate that the universe was never created, nor will it ever cease to exist. It is independent and self-sufficient, and does not require any superior power to govern it. Elaborate description of the shape and function of the physical and metaphysical universe, and its constituents, is provided in the canonical Jain texts, in commentaries, and in the writings of the Jain philosopher monks. The early Jains contemplated the nature of the earth and universe, and developed detailed hypotheses concerning various aspects of astronomy and cosmology. According to the Jain texts, the universe is divided into 3 parts, the upper, middle, and lower worlds, called respectively Urdhvaloka, Madhyaloka, and Adhyacholoka. It is made up of 6 constituents: Jiva, the living entity; Pudgala, matter; Dharmatattva, the substance responsible for motion; Adharmatattva, the substance responsible for rest; Aka, space; and Kala, time. Time is beginningless and eternal. The cosmic wheel of time, called Kalachakra, rotates ceaselessly. It is divided in 2 halves, called Utsarpi and Avasarpi. Utsarpi is a period of progressive prosperity, where happiness increases, while Avasarpi is a period of increasing sorrow and immorality. Jainism views animals and life itself in an utterly different light, reflecting an indigenous Asian understanding that yields a different definition of the soul, the human person, the structure of the cosmos, and ethics. Universal history. According to Jain legends, 63 illustrious beings called Salakapurusas have appeared on earth. The Jain universal history is a compilation of the deeds of these illustrious persons. They comprise 24 Tirthacharas, 12 Cakravartins, 9 Baladevas, 9 Vasudevas, and 9 Prativsudevas. Tirthacharas are the human beings who help others to achieve liberation. They propagate and revitalize Jain faith and become role models for those seeking spiritual guidance. They reorganize the fourfold order that consists of monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen. Jain tradition identifies Rishabha, also known as ʻdʒeɪnɪz, as the first Tirthankara. The last two Tirthankara, Prva and Mahavira, are historical figures whose existence is recorded. A Cakravartin is an emperor of the world and lord of the material realm. Though he possesses worldly power, he often finds his ambitions dwarfed by the vastness of the cosmos. Jain Puranas give a list of 12 Cakravartins. They are golden in complexion. One of the greatest Cakravartin mentioned in Jain scriptures is Bharata. Traditions say that India came to be known as Bharatavarsha in his memory. There are 9 sets of Baladeva, Vasudeva and Prativsudeva. Certain Digambara texts refer to them as Balabhadra, Narayana, and Pratinarayana, respectively. The origin of this list of brothers can be traced to the Jinakara tribe by Bhadrabeha, c. 3rd-4th century BCE. Baladeva are non-violent heroes, Vasudeva are violent heroes, and Prativsudeva can be described as villains. According to the legends, the Vasudeva ultimately kill the Prativasudeva. Of the 9 Baladeva, 8 attain liberation, and the last goes to heaven. The Vasudeva go to hell on account of their violent exploits, even if these were intended to uphold righteousness. Ethics. Non-violence. The principle of non-violence or ahimsa is the most distinctive and well-known aspect of Jain religious practice. The Jain understanding and implementation of ahimsa is more radical, scrupulous, and comprehensive than in other religions. Non-violence is seen as the most essential religious duty for everyone. A scrupulous and thorough application of non-violence to everyday activities, and especially to food, is the most significant hallmark of Jain identity. The Jain diet, observed by the followers of Jain culture and philosophy, is one of the most rigorous forms of spiritually motivated diet found either on the Indian subcontinent or elsewhere. It is completely vegetarian, excludes onions and garlic, and may additionally exclude potatoes and other root vegetables. The strictest forms of Jain diet are practiced by the ascetics. For Jains, lacto-vegetarianism represents the minimal obligation. Food which contains even small particles of the bodies of dead animals or eggs is absolutely unacceptable. Jain scholars and activists support veganism, as the production of dairy products involves violence against cows. Strict Jains do not eat root vegetables such as potatoes and onions, because tiny organisms are injured when the plant is pulled up, and also because a bulb or tuber's ability to sprout is seen as characteristic of a living being. Jains make considerable efforts in everyday life not to injure plants any more than necessary. Although they admit that plants must be destroyed for the sake of food, they accept such violence only inasmuch as it is indispensable for human survival, and there are special instructions for minimizing violence against plants. Jains also go out of their way not to hurt even small insects and other minuscule animals. They rarely go out at night, when it is more likely that they might trample insects. In their view, injury caused by carelessness is like injury caused by deliberate action. Eating honey is strictly outlawed, as it would amount to violence against the bees. Jains avoid farming, because it inevitably entails unintentional killing or injuring of small animals, such as worms and insects. But agriculture is not forbidden in general, and Jain farmers exist. Additionally, because they consider harsh words to be a form of violence, they often keep a cloth for a ritual mouth covering, serving as a reminder not to allow violence in their speech. Although every life form is said to deserve protection from injury, Jains admit that this ideal cannot be completely implemented in practice. Hence they recognize a hierarchy of life that gives less protection to immobile beings than to mobile ones, which are further distinguished by the number of senses they possess, from 1 to 5. A single-sensed animal has touch as its only sensory modality. The more senses a being has, the more care Jains take for its protection. Among those with 5 senses, rational beings, humans, are the most strongly protected by ahimsa. Nonetheless, Jains agree that violence and self-defense can be justified, and that a soldier who kills enemies in combat is performing a legitimate duty. Jain communities have accepted the use of military power for their defense, and there have been Jain monarchs, military commanders, and soldiers. Self-control. Jainism encourages spiritual development through cultivation of personal wisdom, and through reliance on self-control through vows. Jains accept different levels of compliance for ascetics and lay followers. Ascetics of this religion undertake 5 major vows. 1. Ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-violence. The first major vow taken by ascetics is to cause no harm to living beings. It involves minimizing intentional and unintentional harm to other living creatures. 2. Satya. Satya figuratively means truth. This vow is to always speak the truth. Given that non-violence has priority, other principles yield to it. Whenever they conflict, in a situation where speaking truth could lead to violence, silence is to be observed. 3. Asteya. The third vow, asteya, is to not take anything that is not willingly offered. Attempting to extort material wealth from others, or to exploit the weak is considered theft. 4. Brahmacharya. The vow of brahmacharya requires the exercise of control over the senses by refraining from indulgence in sexual activity. 5. Aparigraha. Aparigraha means non-possessiveness. This vow is to observe detachment from people, places, and material things. Ascetics completely renounce property and social relations. Laymen are encouraged to observe the 5 cardinal principles of non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, celibacy, and non-possessiveness within their current practical limitations, while monks and nuns are obligated to practice them very strictly. History. Royal patronage. Chandragupta Maurya, c. 322–298 BCE, became a Jain in the later part of his life. The ancient city Pithandal, capital of Kalinga, is described in the Jain text Uttara Sutra as an important center at the time of Mahavira, and was frequented by merchants from Champa. Rishabha, the first Tirthankara, was revered and worshipped in Pithandal, and is known as the Kalinga Jina. Mahapadmananda, c. 450–362 BCE, conquered Kalinga, and took a statue of Rishabha from Pithandal to his capital in Magadha. Jainism is said to have flourished under Nanda Empire. The Mauryan dynasty came to power after the downfall of Nanda Empire. The first Mauryan emperor, Chandragupta, c. 322–298 BCE, became a Jain in the latter part of his life. He was a disciple of Bhadrabaha, a Jaina Crya, who was responsible for propagation of Jainism in South India. The Mauryan king Ashoka was converted to Buddhism, and his pro-Buddhist policy subjugated the Jains of Kalinga. Ashoka's grandson Samprati, c. 224–215 BCE, however, is said to have converted to Jainism by a Jain monk named Swasti. He is known to have erected many Jain temples. He ruled a place called Ujjain. In the 1st century BCE, the Emperor Kharvela of Mahameghavahana dynasty conquered Magadha. He retrieved Rishabha's statue and installed it in Udayagiri, near his capital Shishapalgad. Kharavela was responsible for the propagation of Jainism across the Indian subcontinent. Huansang, 629–645 CE, a Chinese traveler, notes that there were numerous Jains present in Kalinga during his time. The Udayagiri and Kandagiri caves near Bhubaneswar are the only surviving stone Jain monuments in Orissa. King Vanaraja, c. 720–780 CE, of Kavada dynasty in northern Gujarat was raised by a Jain monk Salangasuri. He supported Jainism during his rule. the king of Kanauj c. 8th century CE, was converted to Jainism by Bapabhati, a disciple of famous Jain monk Siddhasenadivakara. Bapabhati also converted Vakpati, the friend of Ama, who authored a famous Prakrit book named Godavao. Decline. The Hindu philosopher Adi Shankara propagated Hinduism at the expense of Jainism. Once a major religion, Jainism declined due to a number of factors, including proselytizing by other religious groups, persecution, withdrawal of royal patronage, sectarian fragmentation, and the absence of central leadership. Since the time of Mahavira, Jainism faced rivalry with Buddhism and the various Hindu sects. The Jains suffered isolated violent persecutions by these groups, but the main factor responsible for the decline of their religion was the success of Hindu reformist movements. Around the 7th century, Shaivism saw considerable growth at the expense of Jainism due to the efforts of the Shaivita poets like Sambandar and Appar. Around the 8th century CE, the Hindu philosophers Kumarayalabha and Adi Shankara tried to restore the orthodox Vedic religion. The royal patronage has been a key factor in the growth as well as decline of Jainism. The Pallava king Mahendra I, 600-630 CE, converted from Jainism to Shaivism under the influence of Appar. His work Madhavilasa Prahasana ridicules certain Shaiva sects and the Buddhists, and also expresses contempt towards Jain ascetics. Sambandar converted the contemporary Pandya king back to Shaivism. During the 11th century, Brahmana Basava, a minister to the Jain king Vijayala, succeeded in converting numerous Jains to the Lingayat Shaivita sect. The Lingayats destroyed various temples belonging to Jains and adapted them to their use. The Hoysala king Vishnuvardhana, c. 1108-1152 CE, became a follower of the Vaishnava sect under the influence of Ramanuja, after which Vaishnavism grew rapidly in the present-day Karnataka. As the Hindu sects grew, the Jains compromised by following Hindu rituals and customs and invoking Hindu deities in Jain literature. There are several legends about the mass massacre of Jains in the ancient times. The Buddhist king Ashoka, 304-232 BCE, is said to have ordered killings of 18,000 Jains or Ayavikas after someone drew a picture of Buddha bowing at the feet of Mahavira. The Savite king Kun Pandion, who briefly converted to Jainism, is said to have ordered a massacre of 8,000 Jains after his reconversion to Saivism. However, these legends are not found in the Jain texts and appear to be fabricated propaganda by Buddhists and Saivites. Such stories of destruction of one sect by another sect were common at the time, and were used as a way to prove the superiority of one sect over the other. There are stories about the Jain king of Kanchi persecuting the Buddhists in a similar way. Another such legend about Vishnuvardhana ordering the Jains to be crushed in an oil mill doesn't appear to be historically true. The decline of Jainism continued after the Islamic conquest of India. The Muslims conquerors of India, such as Mahmud Ghazni 1001, Muhammad Ghori 1175, and Alauddin Muhammad Shah Khilji 1298, further oppressed the Jain community. They vandalized idols and destroyed temples or converted them into mosques. They also burned the Jain books and killed Jains. Some conversions were peaceful, however. Parmabir Kamdayat, c. 13th century CE, is well known for his peaceful propagation of Islam. The Jains also enjoyed amicable relations with the rulers of the tributary Hindu kingdoms during this period. However, their number and influence had diminished significantly due to their rivalry with the Savite and the Vaisnavite sects. Present times. With 4.2 million followers, Jainism is among the smallest of the major world religions. Jains live throughout India, with the largest populations concentrated in the states of Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. Karnataka and Tamil Nadu also have relatively large Jain populations. Outside India, large Jain communities can be found in the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Kenya. Jainism is a fairly strong faith in the United States, with several dozen Jain temples having been built there, primarily by the Gujarati community. American Jainism accommodates all the sects. Small Jain communities also exist in Nepal, Sri Lanka, South Africa, Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, Australia, Fiji, and Suriname. In Belgium, the very successful Indian diamond community in Antwerp, almost all of whom are Jain, opened the largest Jain temple outside India in 2010 to strengthen Jain values in and across Western Europe. Schools and branches. The Jain community is divided into two major sects, Digambara and ʻdʒeɪnɪz. Digambara monks do not wear clothes because they believe these, like other possessions, increase dependency and desire for material things, and desire for anything ultimately leads to sorrow. This practice restricts full monastic life, and therefore maka to males, as Digambaras do not permit women to be nude. Female renunciates wear white, and are referred to as ʻdʒeɪnɪz. ʻdʒeɪnɪmbara monastics, on the other hand, wear white seamless clothes for practical reasons, and believe there is nothing in the scriptures that condemns the wearing of clothes. Women are accorded full status as renunciates, and are often called sadhvi, the feminine of sadhu, a term often used for male monastics. ʻdʒeɪnɪmbara believe women may attain liberation, and that the Tirthankara Mllntha was female. The earliest record of Digambara beliefs is contained in the Prakrit Sutta Payuda of the Digambara mendicant Kundakunda, c. 2nd century CE. Digambaras believe that Mahavira remained unmarried, whereas ʻdʒeɪnɪmbara believe Mahavira married a woman who bore him a daughter. The two sects also differ on the origin of Nadatrashala, Mahavira's mother. 87. Excavations at Mathura revealed Jain statues from the time of the Kushan Empire, c. 1st century CE. Tirthankara, represented without clothes, and monks with cloth wrapped around the left arm are identified as the ʻdʒeɪnɪz, half-clothed mentioned in texts. The Japanese, believed to have originated from the ʻdʒeɪnɪz, followed Digambara nudity, along with several ʻdʒeɪnɪmbara beliefs. ʻdʒeɪnɪmbara subsects include Sthanakavasi, Terapanti, and Murti Pujaka. The Sthanakvasi and Terapanti are Anisonic. ʻdʒeɪnɪmbara follow the 12 Jain agamas. Digambara subsects include Bizapanti, Kanjipanti, Taranapanthi, and Terapanti. In 1974, a committee with representatives from every sect compiled a new text called the Sammansuttam. Timeline of various denominations in Jainism. Art and architecture. Bahubali monolith of Shravanabalagola. Jainism has contributed significantly to Indian art and architecture. Jains mainly depict Tirthankara, or other important people, in a seated or standing meditative posture. Yakshas and Yakshinis, attendant spirits who guard the Tirthankara, are usually shown with them. Figures on various seals from the Indus Valley civilization bear similarity to Jain images, nude, and in a meditative posture. The earliest known Jain image is in the Patna Museum. It is approximately dated to the 3rd century BCE. Bronze images of Prva can be seen in the Prince of Wales Museum, Mumbai, and in the Patna Museum. These are dated to the 2nd century BCE. A sandalwood sculpture of Mahavira was carved during his lifetime, according to tradition. Later the practice of making images of wood was abandoned, other materials being substituted. Remnants of ancient Jain temples and cave temples can be found all around India. Notable among these are the Jain caves at Udayagiri Hills near Belsa, Vidisha, in Madhya Pradesh, and Ellora in Maharashtra, and the Jain temples at Dilwara near Mount Abu, Rajasthan. The Jain Tower in Chittor, Rajasthan is a good example of Jain architecture. Decorated manuscripts are preserved in Jain libraries, containing diagrams from Jain cosmology. Most of the paintings and illustrations depict historical events, known as Panchkalyanaka, from the life of the Tirthankara. Rishabha, the first Tirthankara, is usually depicted in either the lotus position or Kayatsarga, the standing position. He is distinguished from other Tirthankara by the long locks of hair falling to his shoulders. mythological images also appear in his sculptures. In paintings, incidents of his life, like his marriage and injuries marking his forehead, are depicted. Other paintings show him presenting a pottery bowl to his followers. He is also seen painting a house, weaving, and being visited by his mother Marudevi. Each of the 24 Tirthankara is associated with distinctive emblems, which are listed in such texts as Tilopanati, Kavali, and Pravakanasaraldhara. There are 26 caves, 200 stone beds, 60 inscriptions, and over 100 sculptures in and around Madurai. It was in Madurai that Acharya Bhutapali wrote the Shatkandigama. This is also the site where Jain ascetics of yesteryear wrote great epics and books on grammar and Tamil. The Siddhanavasal cave temple is regarded as one of the finest examples of Jain art. It is the oldest and most famous Jain center in the region. It possesses both an early Jain cave shelter and a medieval rock-cut temple with excellent fresco paintings of par excellence comparable to Ajantha paintings. The steep hill contains an isolated but spacious cavern. Locally, this cavern is known as Eladipatam, a name that is derived from the 7 holes cut into the rock that serve as steps leading to the shelter. Within the cave there are 17 stone beds aligned in 2 rows, and each of these has a raised portion that could have served as a pillow loft. The largest stone bed has a distinct Tamil, Brahmi inscription assignable to the 2nd century BC, and some inscriptions belonging to 8th century BC are also found on the nearby beds. The Siddhanavasal cavern continued to be the holy Srimana abode until the 7th and 8th centuries. Inscriptions over the remaining stone beds name mendicants such as Tolkien Ratu Kadavulan, Tarunilan, Darupuranan, Tatikaranan, Sri Parnikandran, Darukatan, Ilangataman, Sri Ulagaditan, and Nidiyakaran Patakali as monks. The 8th century Kasabamali temple marks the revival of Jainism in South India. A monolithic, 18 m statue of Bayubali referred to as Gamateshvara built by the Ganga minister and commander Chavundaraya is situated on a hilltop in Shravanabalagola, in the Hassan district of Karnataka state. This statue was voted by Indians the first of the Times of India's list of 7 wonders of India. A large number of Agapada, votive tablets for offerings, and the worship of Tirthankara were found at Mathura. Customs and practices. Jains praying at the feet of the statue of Lord Bayubali. Sadhus meditating. Worship. The Ankara mantra is the fundamental prayer of Jainism. In this prayer there is no mention of names, including that of the Tirthankara. Jains do not ask for favors or material benefits from the Tirthankara or from monks. This mantra simply serves as a gesture of deep respect towards beings they believe are more spiritually advanced, and to remind followers of Jainism of their ultimate goal, moksha. In Jainism, the purpose of worship or prayer is to break the barriers of worldly attachments and desires, so as to assist in the liberation of the soul. Jains follow 6 obligatory duties known as avashyakas, samyaka, practicing serenity, chaturvinshati, praising the Tirthankara, vandan, respecting teachers and monks, pratikramana, introspection, kayatsarga, stillness, and pratyakayana, renunciation. Related to the 5 auspicious life events of Tirthankara called the Panchkalyanaka are such rituals as the Panchkalyanaka Pratishta, Panchkalyanaka Puja, and Snatra Puja. Festivals. Paryashana is one of the most important festivals for Jains. Śvētāmbara Jains normally refer to it as Paryashana, with a literal meaning of abiding or coming together, while Digambara Jains call it Daslaksana. It is a time when the laity take on vows of study and fasting, with a spiritual intensity similar to temporary monasticism. Paryashana lasts 8 days for Śvētāmbara Jains, and 10 days for Digambara Jains. Mahavira Jayanti, the birthday of Mahavira, the last Tirthankara, is celebrated on the 13th day of the fortnight of the waxing moon in the month of Chaitra, which date falls in late March, or early April, of the Gregorian calendar. Diwali is a festival that takes place during the month of Kartik in the Indian lunisolar calendar, around the new moon day, Amavasya. This usually falls in October or November. Mahavira attained his nirvana at the dawn of the Amavasya, new moon. According to the Kalpa Strabhadrebhadrebeha, 3rd century BCE, numerous deva were present there, illuminating the darkness. On the 21st of October, 1974, the 2500th Nirvana Mahotsava was celebrated by Jains throughout India. Fasting. Most Jains fast at special times, particularly during festivals. A Jain, however, may fast whenever it seems appropriate. A unique ritual in this religion involves a holy fast to death, called salakana. Through this one achieves a death with dignity and dispassion as well as a great reduction of negative karma. When a person is aware of approaching death and feels that all his or her duties have been fulfilled, he or she may decide to gradually cease eating and drinking. This form of dying is also called santhara. It can take as long as 12 years of gradual reduction in food intake. Considered extremely spiritual and creditable with awareness of the transitory nature of human experience, santhara has recently been the center of a controversy in which a lawyer petitioned the High Court of Rajasthan to declare it illegal. Jains see santhara as spiritual detachment requiring a great deal of spiritual accomplishment and maturity, a declaration that a person has finished with this world and chooses to leave. Meditation. Jains have developed a type of meditation called samayika, a term derived from the word samaya. The goal of samayika is to achieve a feeling of perfect calmness and to understand the unchanging truth of the self. Such meditation is based on contemplation of the universe and the reincarnation of self. Samayika is particularly important during the religious festival Paryashana. It is believed that meditation assists in managing and balancing one's passions. Great emphasis is placed on the internal control of thoughts as they influence behavior, actions, and goals. Monasticism. In Jainism, monasticism is encouraged and respected. Rules for monasticism are rather strict. Jain ascetics have neither a permanent home nor possessions, wandering from place to place except during the months of Chaturmas. Life they lead is difficult because of the constraints placed on them. They do not use vehicles and always travel barefoot from one place to another, irrespective of the distance. They do not use such basic services as telephones or electricity. They do not prepare food and live only on what people offer them. There are no priests in Jainism. The monks of Jainism, whose presence is not significant to most Jain rituals, should not be confused with priests. However, sects of Jainism that practice idol worship often employ a servant, known as a pujari, who need not be a Jain, to perform special daily rituals and other priestly duties.